Hi, so welcome to the inaugural Cyber Fusion Distribution video podcast. This is the first in a series that will be running all throughout 2025. The first one, we're just going to get to know some of our vendors. I've got 4 amazing flagship vendors with us today. I'm going to let them give themselves a quick introduction. So over first to Marco.
No, thank you very much, Steve. Marco Somba, founder and CTO of BlockAPT, UK-based cybersecurity firm providing, a central management platform for cyber defense.
Lovely, thank you.
Hey, good to meet you guys. So Lewis Henderson, I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Team Cymru. And we provide global internet telemetry that we refine into threat intelligence and attack surface management platforms.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lewis. Toby?
Hi, Steve. I'm Toby Cotman. I'm Director of Channels at Semperis. So we're focused solely on Active Directory. We're looking at entry ID and AD from a resiliency and security standpoint.
Brilliant. Thanks, Toby. And Ed?
Hi, Ed Williams, Trustwave. I've been in Trustwave for about 8 years. Trustwave are an MDR and a CPS company, and we do pen testing and all those good things.
Fantastic. Thanks, chaps. So throughout the next 12 months, what we'll do is actually drill down into specific topics. We'll be covering areas of DORA, a lot of regulations. We'll be covering new technologies, innovation, and we'll be bringing in specific vendors to talk through those subject matters. Today is more of a get to know and talk about some of the experiences and trends that my colleagues here have seen throughout 2024 and what we're expecting down the line in 2025. So I guess if I'll come to you first, Marco. 2024, what were some of the key things that you saw, trends that you witnessed?
Yeah, again, I wear different hats as an advisor, also to a lot of the enterprise, but also as obviously CTO of BlockAPT. The consolidation has been quite a big deal, right? In a sense of a lot of tools within your entire ecosystem, but how can you essentially rationalize all of these tools to essentially make the best of them? So certainly I've seen quite a lot of that in 2024, but I suspect, without going too much into details, 2025 is going to see a lot more of those, where we're starting to make sense of this complex ecosystem in terms of the security stack. So that's, I think, where we're going.
No, agreed. We see a lot of that, and especially in the partner landscape. I think if probably one of the primary questions our customers get asked by their end users is, I need more for less. So I need more features, but I've got to consolidate. So the fact that you're seeing that just influences what we're seeing and confirms that. What about yourself, Lewis?
So we look through everything through like a threat intelligence lens. So that's our sort of worldview, and we typically engage with the analysts that are kind of sort of on the front line. And we've definitely seen sort of some parallels with what you guys just mentioned in terms of like consolidation. So there's teams out there that understand they're reaching the limits of some of the platforms they've got, some of the data feeds they've got. And they're now searching, saying, how can we simplify our operation? Where can we get these efficiency gains from? So we know that that's definitely a sort of a driver. The people that they then report into are obviously more budget conscious, budget driven. So those messages of like consolidation, how can we do more for less, and tend to sort of transcend up all through the chain. And also integration has been quite a key theme as well. So we've seen, the people that are using our technologies are reliant on other platforms like SIEM platforms, SOAR platforms. So we've definitely made a lot of progress just ourselves across this year in terms of like the amount of vendors that we support in terms of sort of integrations. And then looking to sort of 2025, I think we've seen definitely, because we've been around for a good sort of 25 years now. So we've seen threat intelligence sort of a sector completely mature. But I think, again, coming back to my point where we've seen people reach the limits and they're now really looking like, I now need to go beyond my borders, and that's where we come into it. So we're really opening up that sort of visibility to them. So I think into 2025 with things like DORA that you just mentioned, there's specific regulation, also NIS2, and there are now specific articles about, understanding what's beyond your borders, getting to know your supply chain, but not waiting till they tell you what it's like, actually being proactive. So I think, proactive threat intelligence across 2025, big thing that we're seeing, big theme there. So
yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Toby, Semperis, for the last couple of years, I've seen identity, Active Directory, everything associated with that now fall under a cybersecurity banner, of which you guys, are part. What have you guys seen over the last year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think 2024 was a pretty tough year for the Office of the CISO. Trying to operate under budget constraints driven by potentially economic uncertainty. And all the time they're trying to hit the regulatory compliance that's currently in place, but also thinking about, the things that the guys have mentioned here, looking at DORA next year as well. So we've seen a lot of executive burnout from the CISO community. So yeah, it's been tough for them, but I think, moving into next year, if they can leverage some of the things we see coming down the line, like AI, for example, hopefully that will make their job slightly easier.
No, makes sense. And Ed, Trustwave, a huge MDR services. How does your last year look for you guys and what you've seen?
So, if I take it from an offensive security perspective, I think things are just as bad as they've ever been. To be brutally honest, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I was authoring pen test reports 20 years ago, and I look at pen test reports from last week, and there's not a huge difference, if I'm being absolutely honest. The issues are still as bad, they're still as impactful as they've ever been. So I'm as hopeful as I'll ever be, but we really need to get a grip on the basics, the fundamentals. Patching, passwords, policy, nothing's changed as far as I'm concerned. And it's hard to get people to focus on the basics because they're boring and they're hard to do at scale. But that's really the message from me, and I'm sure it'll be the same for 2025.
Trustwave, one of the biggest providers and the most successful email security providers out there. And the fact I should sit here and say, email is secure, but people have been looking at it for 30 years, yet it's still one of the largest areas that people get attacked through.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Security is really, really hard. You add on AI now, and we've got a fantastic email product, but even then it's really hard. Like when we're doing, again, back to OffSec, when we're looking to use AI, we're creating phishing emails that are really, really tempting to click on. The focus that we put on individuals is significant. And it only takes one click, as we all know, and somebody's up and running and moving laterally within your environment. So security is really hard, and it's going to be even harder again, I think, in 2025.
If I look back over the last 12 months myself, consolidation, as you say, cloud, 12 months and beyond, AI, nothing's changed. I think it's probably going to be the same three. From an AI perspective, do you think we are ever going to get there? There's obviously a lot of openness and willingness to consume AI, but will there always be a level where we'll only let it be semi-independent? Will we ever release it to be autonomous? Or
yeah, I think the AI one is very interesting, at least from my perspective, because we kind of building a platform that kind of brings all these fantastic tools. For example, you talked about offsec, Active Directory. I think we really need to start with the basics before we really jump onto AI. Yes, AI will give you the ability to detect faster, for example, when you talk about pen test, right, where you can have these AI bots that can actually discover vulnerability faster than you can actually respond. So that's going to have an impact in terms of the time, of response, where vulnerability in terms of the gap could be detected a lot quicker, and obviously being able to exploit it. So I think from my own practical experience, I think that's going to be quite a gap that a lot of enterprise will have to be able to. You're not going to have weeks. You're probably going to have minutes, sometimes hours, in terms of being able to react to those. That is going to be a challenge, especially if you do not have an ecosystem where you've got some sort of end-to-end, protection. I think that will be exploited in a very I would say offensive way, right?
I think when you think about AI, it's never going to get worse. It's only going to get better and smarter. So the worst case scenario for me as someone who's involved in security is a set of patches comes out on Tuesday traditionally. By Wednesday, you just feed that into your AI and there's a working exploit. So the time to sort of patch is going to get a lot smaller, a lot shorter. So I think as security professionals, we just need to be on top of these things even more, because the time for us to defend is going to be even shorter and even harder. So we just need to be really on top of things and try to be realistic as well with sort of expectations and what we need to do.
And is there a point, Lewis, where AI goes against what you do as a vendor, or where it won't always enhance what you do? can it be counterproductive as a vendor out there sometimes with your solutions?
I've studied AI and AI safety in particular for like several years now. So, and coming back to your point, like, you know, are we there yet? A lot of the people that are way more expert than myself, like, are saying we may not have a choice. So there is that. There's all these sorts of interesting side effects of AI where, you know, it can hallucinate, and that again is a common sort of thing. So from Team Cymru, we have developed some sort of fairly high-level sort of AI tools to help the analysts gain context. Because what we know, and I think, you know, again, there's these common themes here. Where, like, a lot of the people working in security are extremely fatigued. They're very, very stressed. You know, why they fatigued is because they get bombarded with like false positives, or, you know, there's just too much noise out there. So we've gone down the specific route of creating AI that helps the analyst gain immediate context. And what I mean by that is like taking potentially thousands of data points that they would have to maybe spend, you know, days, if not sort of weeks researching, and then condensing that down into something usable in format. Yeah. And also because the analysts themselves are very, very technical people, then they have to kind of report stuff up through the chain. And of course, by the time it gets to like senior decision maker, they don't want a big, deep sort of technical report. They just want something that's sort of fairly high level. So the AI again is there to help, you know, with that communication. So we're sort of focused there. I think we're keeping it very, very grounded and very, very specific. I think that helps. And yeah, so we're launching that as an experiment from January onwards, January 2025 onwards. So we're quite looking forward to getting that in the hands of our users. So.
And another big area we hear a lot about, or have done for the last probably 2-3 years, is cloud, and people moving to the cloud, adopting cloud. I've heard a lot about people moving and then coming back, but cloud still seems to be on everyone's lips. Is Toby, you know, Semperis, is there a view in terms of the solution that you're pushing? Cloud, you seeing that adoption?
Absolutely. So, as I said before, you know, we're interested in Active Directory and Entra ID. So we see lots of organisations moving towards a cloud environment. However, when you look at Entra ID and AD, they are so intrinsically linked that a lot of the time we find sort of 90% of organisations are still operating in a hybrid environment. Yeah. So there's always that Active Directory that kind of sits behind that cloud. That cloud environment. And the issue that you've got with Active Directory is it's 24 years old, 25 years old. So, you know, it's kind of a soft underbelly when you're looking at potential threats, external threats. And Microsoft themselves have kind of recognized that just recently, actually, coming into 2025, there's going to be new patches for AD, which is something that, you know, they haven't done for a long, long time. So it's still there. It's not going away. There's always those companies that are kind of born in the cloud that will, you know, have their identities and manage those identities from Entra ID. But yeah, like I said, we're still seeing hybrid environments as the kind of majority of customers that we see.
I don't think you're alone there. You know, we've seen a lot of that, and I think full transfer to the cloud, will it happen? I'm probably a little bit skeptical about that.
Application. I mean, it's whether it lends itself to being in the cloud.
We see multi-cloud as well.
Yeah.
You know, people will be on AWS for one thing, Azure for something else, and it's great as a pen tester trying to sort of get across or back through an environment, because the sort of the attack surface is pretty large. So we love that. The more complex the environment, the better it is for us to get some sort of credential or some sort of domain admin, which is it's always the golden ticket.
And how do you, talking about those guys, how do you all feel about working with the likes of AWS? I mean, they seem to be, you know, huge out there, the Googles of this world. It seems to be, I hate to say it, they seem to be the next generation distributor. You know, they've got the intelligence, they've got the products, they've got the vendors, they've got the customers. They certainly seem to be getting the market share. Is that something you guys are embracing, AWS and Marketplace?
Absolutely. Again, from the enterprise point of view, it kind of makes sense. You talked about multi-cloud, right? Which is something that, at least in finance, that I've seen quite a lot, where it's not just AWS, you know, it's also Azure, it's also GCP. So where you're not just going to be relying on a single, you know, cloud provider, you know, for all, you know, obvious resilience reasons. I don't think that's going to stop. But the flexibility of being able to move from on-prem, you know, also to cloud, I think people are now, I've actually heard customers talking about moving away, taking some of the resource back from the cloud and going back on-prem simply because of costing reasons. Yeah. So we are at the forefront of that discussion, because obviously our platform allows customers to move. If you wanted to press a button to go from cloud to on-prem, you've got the ability to do that. But certainly, I don't think it's no longer cloud or on-prem. Now customers, enterprise, they're looking for flexibility in terms of being able to, switch, as needed. So yeah, multi-cloud, I don't think we're going to be running away from that anytime soon.
No.
But
I think the key to all of that is having the governance around cloud, hybrid, on-prem. Like, we get a lot of success. Somebody's spun up a machine and just forgotten about it.
Yes.
Like the amount of times we've compromised an environment.
Yeah.
And we hacked into this machine, and the guy's there. I don't even know what that is. That shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Pound to a penny, somebody's just forgotten to turn it off. And that happens all the time. So the governance around all of this is super important. And again, really hard in large, complex environments.
Definitely. We did an experiment with some of our customers across last year. We ended up publishing a report about it. It's like digital landscape for financial services, but we're helping them understand that, some of the assets they've had facing the internet were between 5 to 10 years old. And a common use case is that, and I think you're right to talk about like governance, and that includes like process, procedure, 100%. Policy, sort of all around it, where that may not meet the specific department that spun up that asset. And I think a classic example of like marketing team, running a promotion, spinning up like a website to collect like, email addresses and all this sort of stuff. And then moving on to the next project without actually cleaning it up after them. So there's so many examples of that. And then also, they then may be left unpatched.
Inevitably.
Yeah. And so we see lots of examples like that as well. So I think, the study took into account like 5 major banks and about 60,000 assets. And I think 5% of the assets that we came across, bearing in mind these are financial organizations, 5% of the assets that we came across had, active vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
So it goes again, when our sort of take on the cloud is that you need visibility of it all. You need to know where all these like external assets are. So even just being aware of what you've got and then applying the governance and policy process around it, like these are real key security principles. Again, I think we're coming back to that. It's back to basics, isn't it?
Asset management is really hard. Getting good, proper asset management. It's the first thing when I'm speaking to a client, what's your asset management like? And there's always that sort of, could be better. And it only takes one missing patch on one host somewhere and you're underwater. So it's hard.
So how far do your eyes roll in the back of your head when you come across a spreadsheet when they say, where's your inventory?
Can't beat a spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet hell, as I call it, But I get it. I've been around long enough and the solution is hard. You need somebody who's dedicated and focused and really understanding the issues that they're trying to fix. It's hard going.
Definitely. We found automation. I think that this, again, we're coming back to like, these efficiencies, like how do we create like efficient workflows? So we've definitely seen a theme across this year about applying automation to that discovery process. Like where is everything? Like help me find stuff. So we've definitely seen a lot of use cases that sort of relate to that. And then you're on to that next wave. Again, now I know where everything is.
Yeah.
How much risk am I exposed to? And go through that next wave. So it's interesting topic.
Yeah, and of course then the more assets you have, the more work you inevitably have.
Yes.
Because you've got to patch them, you've got to update them, you've got to understand them. There's nothing better for us to find that old NT4 system in the corner and without, what is that? And somebody's like, I just no idea. We just know we shouldn't turn it off because the lights will go out.
Oh, yeah.
So that happens again all the time.
Were there any prolific threats you thought stood head and shoulders above everything over the last year? What stood out for you in terms of what enterprises were seeing and experiencing? Was there one threat out there that,
I think good old ransomware is still pernicious, nasty. And I think a lot of it is because of the cloud.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to scale and to get ransomware out. You can sort of be indiscriminate against who you're attacking. You can obviously be very focused. But yeah, I think good old ransomware is going to be around for a long time. And, making sure you've got good phishing, defenses. Again, back to the basics. But they're really hard to do and really hard to defend against.
Yeah, so as you say, the basics, everything comes back down to the basics.
Yeah. And, I hate to use the word snake oil, but there seems to be a lot of that.
Yeah.
You've got to get people focused on getting the basics. And they're the basics, not because they're easy, because they're hard. And getting people back aligned to focus on those is difficult because it's boring and it's hard work.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a challenge because as a hands-on guy working with a lot of banks, financial institutions, you have to give them credit of trying a lot of the background, but it is hard. For example, one of the things that we're trying to help customers with is, can you have as much as possible in the background being autonomous? For example, discovering, assets, right? It's just not practical to think, someone is going to be there trying to make sense of it. So we have SOAR, we have SIM, we have all this fantastic system, but we really need to deploy it in a way that this system could actually do work for us in the background. For example, an asset is plugged into your network. We have the technology to be able to detect it, using NAC, and then report on the state, and then go from that to vulnerability. So we really have to come back, I like that, come back to basics. There is technologies, we know what we need to do, but we have to get better at actually doing these things. Otherwise, they're kind of same old, really.
And how do we talk about going back to basics, but obviously fundamental part of my business is innovation, as I'm sure is, you guys as vendors, you're very innovative technology. As a CISO, how do you juggle that where I've got to go back to basics, but also I want to be innovative and bring in, innovative vendors. That must be a challenge in itself.
Yeah, just to add on that, challenging. I wouldn't take a CISO job, by the way. So that's I think that must be a nightmare. Obviously, I'm helping a lot of CISOs, but I wouldn't want to be on that seat because it's all threat and all bad news. Not
everything's bad all the time.
Everything bad all the time. However, I think from a technology point of view, there is a high level of maturity in terms of, look at the cybersecurity ecosystem. We have tons of vendors, right, that are doing great things as point solution. But we really have to come to the point where, yes, we now have those technology, but how do we really get all of these things working better together? And this is essentially what I've seen, where there's no single enterprise or governments where I've gone in there and I've not seen that they have the technology. You name it, IPS, Entra ID, PAM, it's all in there. But are they really working well together? And I think this is really where things get a little bit messy. And that's why even just finish on that, even on the cloud, right? I was working with one of the major cloud providers, where some of the VMs, they get left, open in the cloud. Someone spinned up a VM, finished using it, they didn't shut it down, any rules, again, basic stuff, but it's still happening. And it's not exactly easy. So there you go.
I think as well, when you go back to, like antivirus is a good thing. I think everybody can agree on that. But the amount of machines that I've compromised that use antivirus because the way it's been configured has been poor, it's unbelievable. So it's really hard that any way you increase a footprint is going to be an attack surface for somebody. So you've got to really, going back to what you were saying, being a CISO it's not a nice job because everything's on fire all the time. So you've really got to understand what you've got in your business, getting through asset management, and then the process of making all that secure. So it's really hard.
I think there's definitely a role for the channel to play in kind of shifting through some of that noise for those CISOs. So we're all talking about really point solutions. We all work for different vendors. We all know our subject matter, but for the partners, I think that's where they can really add their value. So going and talking to those end users, talking to the CISOs, and kind of helping them tie those technologies together. You mentioned there around PAM and some of the other technologies, and that's what we see. We see some of those end users will have things like IAG, PAM solutions. But really, they need to take a step back and have a look at the fundamental identity stores as well. So looking at Active Directory. And one of the biggest problems for us is understanding who actually owns that in the business as well. Because I guess I'm maybe slightly different to you guys in the fact that it's not necessarily owned by security teams. It's business operations as well.
Correct. Yeah.
It's the Spider-Man meme where everyone's pointing at each other.
Absolutely.
So we see that all the time. So again, so the area that we sort of focus on everything outside the network and outside the boundary. So assets can appear on a register, but finding an owner, this is where we, is it the security team? Is it the IT team? Also, which is it a subsidiary? There's all these sort of questions actually that sometimes, more often than not, we're bringing them problems that they don't have answers to. So I think it's on us as like sort of vendors to help sort of guide sort of through that process. And coming back to your point about sort of innovation, about one of our sort of focuses like trying to get back to what a CISO is interested in, which is the bottom line. Ultimately it's great that an innovation can sound interesting, it can sound compelling, But we spend a lot of time and effort trying to create like what's the business case behind this particular technology. You know, what's going to be the motivating sort of factor? You know, is it cost efficiencies, and what does it actually look like? Put it in numbers for me. And I think coming back to your point about like enabling channel partners to have that conversation, that's when you get that scale and get that sort of power of that message sort of getting through. So yeah, I do see a lot of the responsibility sort of back on us as innovation sounds great, but so what? And it's helping the CISO sort of understand and answer that question, you know, through the channel and through the partners and get their support. So.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
I think as well, sort of calculating ROI is really difficult on security, probably almost impossible, because it's only, you only know how bad things are when you've been compromised, and then the checkbook seems to be pretty open at that point. But then getting spend elsewhere and at other times can be challenging and difficult. Yeah. So again, difficult.
Well, I can put some context around how difficult it is. So I commissioned a report with Forrester about 3 years ago, and what most of our customers are typically within Fortune 100. This one sits within the Fortune 5, so they're well funded. Budget's always going to be an issue for teams, but at least they got the funding, the expertise, the knowledge. And it actually took us 6 months working with that team to really like dig in and understand like the ROI. So it is not simple, especially from cybersecurity. Has always been a bit of an insurance sell. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's a bit like spend this, we can save you why, but really. Mm-hmm. And then the other context is like trying not to be sort of generic. ROI is completely down to each individual organization.
Yeah.
So everyone's got their own sort of take on it.
Absolutely.
As a vendor, as a partner, we're still very much driven by the buck. We're still siloed. As much as I would love to go out and make sure every organization was safe, secure, we sell according to what we believe in, according to our portfolio. So everything is governed by pounds and pence, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. On the spin of that, you said about internally, all the corporates. Do you still feel that they're very siloed? Network don't speak security. Is there still not that interaction we need in end users?
Yeah, if I sort of see it through the lens of how our customers are using our sort of products and our sort of platforms, and I think these are the issues that they surface. So yeah, as our platform can surface like here's 20,000 problems that you didn't know about before. Great, So now it's on the cybersecurity team to engage with the IT team. And then when you're talking about like larger organizations, their supply chains can be like 4,000 organizations, for example. So yeah, this whole conversation of like who owns what, really, really challenging. And what we're trying to do, and again, there's a few elements to this, like bringing in like AI again. It's like, is it something I own? Like, yes. Like, what's the next step? Is it vulnerable? Yes. And something that we're working really hard to try and do is then apply additional sort of context to saying, is there an active threat talking to that specific asset? Yeah. Because one of these problems the teams have is like, how do I prioritize? Where do I start my sort of working day? And you can scale it up all the way up to senior management, senior executives and things like that.
I think you all said none of you would ever want to be a CISO in this world. It's it's a job that no one wants, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the silo element is still, I think that's still a little bit ingrained. I mean, if you just look at same logic, today I get into a car, depending whichever make car you've got, I don't need to worry about, how the brakes working, the engine. It's all a consolidated package, which is fully integrated, right? But if you look at cybersecurity, again, individual product, siloed point solutions, probably too many of them. But again, how do we make sense? So I think the silo element is still a very, very big headache. And I don't think maybe vendors in a sense also at fault because, we kind of push that, point solution, say, hey, buy my EDR, therefore all your problems are solved. But in practice, we have to get better at really bringing these technologies. Obviously, there are many frameworks today in terms of APIs, which obviously also Gartner has been pushing. But I think this is really the last challenge. Because until we really, like say the car analogy again, we can bring all of those fantastic point solution and tools working as one, because the bad guys are orchestrating in a single front, but all these products are kind of more or less working in isolation. So I would say this is probably one of the biggest challenge we still have today within the enterprise.
I think there's a few things there, isn't there? Like the bad guys, they only need to be right once. Like they don't check a risk register. Like they just go at it and find the easiest thing they can to do whatever they need to do. So where we see mature organizations do well is when the silos are broken down. They understand how data flows through their organization. Once you understand that, then you can put guards in place to sort of help that. But they're few and far between, if I'm being absolutely honest.
Yeah.
Like there's always a guy in a corner who's got a beard who probably understands how the Unix machines work, and he doesn't want to talk to anybody else. So it's getting him on board is the challenge.
And do you also think their jobs got harder looking upwards? So obviously, yes, they've got the whole teams, the technology, the threats, but do you think the landscape's changed now in terms of CISO used to have control, whereas now they've got a board above them? Do you think things are run by FDs now, CFOs, CEOs, and the CISO has a limited part in what he actually has capability for doing?
I think you're right, because the spend can be large.
Yeah.
We're talking about significant sums of money for products and services that help with security. So he is on his own, and he isn't on his own in some ways. So he's got to look up, down, and sideways.
Yeah. I think I was going to say, I'll call it a unicorn because I haven't come across this sort of elsewhere. So I would interviewing a CISO to write one of our customer case studies. And I haven't heard this, within any of our other customers, but he sees himself as a business unit and as a profit center. So not as a cost center, which is really interesting. And what he's got about his sort of craft of doing all the usual things like, cybersecurity awareness training, sort of all that great stuff. But now he's going to sort of business units and saying, I can help you operate and within these defined sort of risk parameters sort of thing. So what it's actually allowing the business to do is they're now collaborating, because the business can now have that business level conversation going, we want to spin up this new service or this new product. This is what we want to try and achieve because there's revenue behind it. He can then do all the assessments and then work within those sort of confines. So actually he sees himself definitely as like, I'm part of the business. I'm there to help and enable the business, which was a really interesting sort of perspective to sort of come from. And fortunately we, all of these have to be anonymous just because that's the world we live in. But yeah, he actually won an award for sort of this sort of approach, at a certain sort of CISO event and things like that. So I think it inspires people to sort of think a bit differently.
Absolutely, because if you spin it on his head, the CISO, he needs an MBA, he needs to be an expert in AD, Unix, networking, mainframes probably. Very difficult skill set. Managing people, that's all of that is hard.
And I mean, statistics are all around us, but the one that stood out for me was I think it was 80% of them have little to no IT background now. So they're very, very like business oriented, business goals and things like that as well. So that's helped us sort of recalibrate. So we're an extremely technical product, with very, very technically competent users. But again, our role is like, how do we enable those people to then have that conversation? How do we engage with the senior stakeholders who've got the budget, but not necessarily, they're not really that interested in the technical side. They're like, help me understand, how is this going to help me as a business? How is it going to help me in my role?
That's that ROI, isn't it?
Exactly that. Yeah, definitely. The responsibility always falls back on us. So I really see that as well. So.
Yeah. And have you seen your individual company's marketing change in who it's presented at? So originally, if I go back, we used to pitch everything to the security analyst, then it was the CISO. Have you found now you are pitching more CXO level?
Yeah, I can probably speak to that. So in terms of our reporting and pen tests, we spend a lot of time crafting sort of executive summaries for that exact reason, because they're not technical. Yeah. And they probably shouldn't be either. Maybe sometimes they should, depends. But we spend a lot of time making sure that messaging is really clear. They can totally understand what the issues are, what the impact is. And then further down the report then is all the techie stuff that the other people like to see.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit similar. So where we positioning it to a lot of the CXOs, but in terms of showing the value, again, our platform is really bringing all the magics, together, but being able to be quite precise in terms of the what's the bottom line, right? Because frankly, if I'm a CISO, I'm already using a lot of tools, but what's the point? Why will I want to have these tools or this specific platform or whatever? So we are seeing where CISOs are focusing a lot more on the, that value side. What is this going to do for me? From a bottom line, again, hard metrics, to be able to provide in terms of ROI, where I can say, hey, if you use this system, it's going to reduce X amount within your, your cost and things like that. So I think more and more of that is going to happen, right? Because it's becoming a bit of extreme, where CISO, they really want to see, the exact bottom line rather than, buy this product and kind of hope for the best. Yeah.
And as you alluded to, Toby, going back to the channel, I'm 25 years channel, born and bred. It's where I belong.
Yes, I think that's probably always been the case. To be fair, there's some of those vendors that absolutely embrace the channel, understand the power of it. That those channel partners absolutely own the relationships within those organisations in all different silos as well. So, if you're looking to build a business case with an organisation, then the channel obviously can kind of help you do that. I think there's also a responsibility on the vendors to help the channel enable and make a organisation understand the benefits of buying products.
Yeah. Especially in the world of innovation.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned something earlier which I thought was interesting around acceptable risk. Mm-hmm. So we work with the channel to provide them tools to show a risk calculator to a CISO and give it a kind of economic value as well, to say that this is potentially what you would need to pay to stop this happening. But where do you draw that line on what's an acceptable risk?
Mm-hmm. And just to add on that, obviously the channel also has quite an important role to play, because if you have more than 5,000, let's say, tools and vendors, so I think sometimes the channel role is a bit misunderstood, but now the end customers, I think they kind of seen the value, but before it was more or less trying to push. Channel means pushing more and more vendors and product, but today there's an education role. How do I navigate through all these tons of product? So I think the channel has a role in guiding that, but more or less seen as in innovation, right? Also as a consultant or as a leader, rather than, hey, here's another product for you to buy. So I think that work is better understood now, by CISOs and obviously end customers.
And we've had that confirmed by end users. We run a very successful end user network, CyberFusion. Unify CyberFusion Alliance with a great partner of ours, Trudy, who runs Unify. And we have 400 or 500 security personnel that we actively go out and network to, socialize with. And they're very honest. They don't have the time to get out there and see everything. They're dependent on their teams telling them, but their teams are so swamped in threats. So they've got to rely on their partners. And it's that catch-22. If the right partners aren't educating them, they never get to see the tech, and we never get the eyes on. So it's down for us to, with you guys, use that as a tool, get in front of them and tell them what's out there and what's coming down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, we've had a win recently that's been sort of really successful, and it sort of proved, so winding the clock back a bit. Yeah. I mean, our organisation has been around for 25 years or so, but we've only been in the commercial private sector for about sort of 4 years. So I'm sure we'll get to know more about that as we go along through the series as to why. But yeah, what that's really meant is that we've been at the coalface doing direct sales for a number of years now, because we had to go out and prove it. We had to refine our products, refine our technologies, essentially take something new to market. And really what the last sort of couple of years have been for us is we've now got a dedicated team to sort of partner enablement, partner management. And that's really got that sort of snowball effect. So what it's demonstrated back to us as an organization is that we're a small organization with something quite powerful, but actually combine that with where a partner has decades of providing other IT services, other cybersecurity services, sort of into these pretty key and pretty key strategic accounts. The relationship's already there, the procurement route is already there, everything you can sort of funnel through that. So I think the recent win for us has really sort of demonstrated back to us as an organisation. There's definitely alignment there. Fully embrace the channel, leverage it, and again it ends up, which is that utopia of it, it's mutually beneficial. We're bringing innovation, we're helping the partners kind of understand, why is it innovative, and then jointly taking that offering to that end client. And it's a really powerful sort of combination.
No, that's good to hear, Lewis. So, gentlemen, I think our time's up. So, just want to say thank you very much. Obviously, we'll be breaking out into independent sessions later. We'll be deeper diving into the technology, and throughout the series, throughout 2025, we'll be finding out more about the actual organisations, the people who work for them, where they're going, and look forward to seeing you later throughout the year. Thanks, chaps.
Thank you.
Thanks.